Hello. Contrary to popular belief, I've always been a shy kid. From the earliest time in my life where I could remember, I would always go out of my way to get out of any form of social interaction. It just felt like a game to me, of constantly trying to know what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. It was too much for little me to handle. Now fast forward to today, not much has changed. Though I have learned to project myself better, I still don't understand social cues. What even are those, and why do they change depending on the group of people? When you dap someone up, is it like a fist bump, a slap, clutch, or is it like, I don't know, it changes, right? Either way, I don't understand these things. I never have, and frankly, I never wanted to. That's how I've always been. Now, I still remember the day where I heard the word introvert for the first time. At first, I thought it meant to do something on whether or not you were an innie or an outie, but to my surprise, it wasn't. But it ended up being a word that perfectly described me. Introvert, a person who enjoys more being with their thoughts than being with other people. Now, little me was astounded. He was like, wow, I sure do love thinking about thinking, and I really am quiet. And then, boom, I was exposed to the world of human psychology and personality. Such then was born Eamon, the introvert. Now, I claim to be an introvert, but some of you may be wondering, if he was really an introvert, why is he giving a TED Talk to his entire school at risk of failing and being completely shamed for the rest of his high school career? And to that I say, good point. But there is more to it. Now, I've learned a lot about human psychology and personality over the spans of my life, and I think I'd like to share some of that with you today. So, first of all, there are 16 distinct personality types. That's a lot, and they're held under the blankets of introversion and extroversion. Now, because I'm sure everyone here has the time for this and they care about it so much, I will be going through each of the 16 different types, allocating around 25 minutes for each in alphabetical order. I'm joking. If any of you weren't mad at that, then I'm sorry. No, today we're going to be focusing on a brief summary of the categories, introverts and extroverts. Because those, I'm sure many people are familiar with already, but maybe people don't understand it completely, so we're going to go into them. Now, first off, introverts. Now, introverts tend to be more quiet. They're more reserved. They don't go out of their way to speak to people, and they often spend a lot of time thinking or reading. Now, though this may seem a lot like not very good in terms of being a go-getter, it's actually really good for emotional health. Introverts, because they have a lot more time to think and be with themselves, they have a lot more time to reflect on what has happened and how it made them feel. They're much more emotional creatures than their counterparts. And that's what I think what makes introverts really good about them, is that they're more in tune with their emotions. Now, introverts, though they're shy, pretty smart, or at least in my experience. Maybe I'm an exception. But either way, some of the really popular introverts in this world, some are probably not surprising. For example, we've got Albert Einstein, very popular introvert, Bill Gates, and even the lizard himself, Mark Zuckerberg. So, what about extroverts? Well, now extroverts are basically the polar opposite. They aren't shy. They're outgoing, and they say what they want to say. They're really appreciated by society because they're a go-getter, and they like to speak out. They have a lot of friends because they're socially attractive. They recharge their social battery not by being alone, but by being with other people. Introverts, they got to go home after a long day with the friends. Extroverts, if they spent a lot of time alone, they got to go outside. That's the thing. They're completely opposites when it comes to how they treat being social. Some popular extroverts are the GOAT Muhammad Ali, Steve Jobs, and Your Royal Highness Marie Antoinette. So, some of you may be thinking right now, okay, now this is cool. I've learned a little bit more on kind of what introverts and extroverts are, and if you haven't learned what these were before, now I know exactly what they are. But some of you may be thinking, okay, I know this, but how can I even use this information? It's great that I know what I am, but big whoop. Well, Luckily, I have come to save you with an explanation on how you can use these things. Introducing the 8 cognitive functions. Now, there are 8 of them, but really there are just 4 of them, with all 4 being represented by an extroverted side and an introverted side. And these 4 cognitive functions are feeling, thinking, sensation, and intuition. Now, these 4 functions describes how the brains of introverts or extroverts work. By understanding these things, you can understand more about yourself and how you apply in certain situations. And by using this knowledge, you can give yourself a leg up in life by understanding what works for you and what doesn't. Now, I'll be going into each of introverted and extroverted for each of these functions so you can better understand it. So first off, feeling. Now, introverts, like I said before, are much more emotional creatures. You know, the term, they're in their feels, that's basically what introverts are. They get time to be alone, they get time to think, and they think more about how things made them feel rather than the actions that caused it. Introverted feeling is really associated with understanding other people's emotions as well. Because if you can understand your own emotions, so you can also understand the others. In situations where there's emotional conflict, they often can understand other people, but the one thing about introverts that is somewhat of a downfall is that they don't act on it. They're shy. Now, extroverts, on the other hand, are somewhat of the opposite. While they aren't as in tune with their emotions, they feel very generally. They're pretty broad and they're straightforward with how they think. That leads them to neglecting personal relationships on a deep level with their family and friends. But often their feeling is associated with connecting things that they see in the outer world rather than the inner world. Moving on to thinking. Introverts. Well, they think a lot. They have a lot of time to think, but that makes them overthink. They focus more on specifics and details of situations, and they often spend a lot of time in their head trying to decipher things, because the further you go thinking about something, the more you'll have to think about. They want to have a direct answer, and they want details, which means that in subjects like STEM, they do well, but in subjects like humanities where you have to be quick-witted, not the best. Extroverts, well, they're the opposite. They aren't very specific creatures. They don't think about things in very strong details. Rather, they look at the general idea of things, they look at their goals, and they pursue it very relatively broad. That makes them more efficient because they don't focus on the nitpickiness of tasks, but that also makes them less accurate. So in terms of doing tasks, maybe extroverts could be faster at them, but as for how accurate it is, if maybe you're doing a lab report, you can see an introvert would typically do better. Sensation. Now, introverts, as they're much more in tune with their emotions, when they feel something, whether or not it's a negative feeling, emotion, or maybe if they're punched in the face, they don't think about getting punched in the face, they think about how it made them feel. Now, I know that seems somewhat far-fetched, but it's true. Introverts care a lot more about the emotions behind things, and through sensation, they use emotions they felt in the past and relate them to the ones that they feel today. Extroverts, they don't do this. Extroverts tend to be more look, see thing, it happened. Yeah, it's a lot more caveman-like, I guess, but they more just see things, and if they feel things, they more think about the action rather than the emotions behind it. If you punch an extrovert in the face, he's going to be mad at you because you punched him in the face and not because it made him feel bad. And intuition. Like I said before, introverts are super detailed. And because of that, they become really nitpicky and they overthink things a lot. It makes them less efficient. Their intuition is very similar to this. They look at things, but they don't take it for granted what they see straight away. They look at it and say, what else is going on here? Philosophers tend to be introverts. Now, extroverts, on the other hand, they see something, and instead of looking deeper into that, they tend to connect it to things in their environment. If they see something happen, they look around, okay, what else in the outer world influences it? Now, you can summarize all of these into one general idea that introverts are more detailed, specific, and nitpicky, while extroverts are more outer-worldly, less internal, and more straightforward. This explains why, when you're looking at STEM subjects, that introverts have statistically done better because all of the subject material is detail-oriented and it's linear and unchanging, while in humanities, extroverts do better because there's variability and things often change, also public speaking. Now, this is really cool. And I'm sure everyone's astounded in their seats right now. But you may be wondering, how can I even apply this information at all? You also may be wondering, wait, I have an extroverted trait, but I also have an introverted trait. Shouldn't it be one or the other? Where am I? If I'm not an introvert or an extrovert, if I'm both, what does that make me? Well, luckily, I have come to save you with an explanation. You can thank me later. So, introducing the child of extroversion and introversion, ambiversion. Ambiversion is basically anything in between being an introvert or an extrovert. For example, if I'm left and right-handed, I'm ambidextrous. So if I'm introverted and extroverted, I'm ambiverted. Yeah, thanks class. All right. So according to a 5-point scale measuring the personality of people in 2014 with around 3,000 people, it was shown that a small percentage of the population identified with one strong end of the spectrum, either being introverted or extroverted, while most fell somewhere in the middle. This proves that most people in society aren't an introvert or an extrovert. They're somewhere in between. And this can be determined by the social situations that you get put in, the circumstances of your school. I know that coming to Brentwood has made me more of an extrovert. I'm an introvert by nature, but I'm giving you a speech right now because Brentwood has conditioned me to do so. It's changed me. But maybe we should go into more of an explanation of this. So there's this thing known as the Myers-Briggs personality test. And it's a test consists of 93 analysis questions where it tells you exactly what your personality is based off of how you answer. It's really useful because not only can you understand more about yourself, but it also tells us something else. There is a concept known as test-retest validity. And it's the idea that if you take a test now, in 3 years in the future, you should be able to get the exact same results. But when used on the Myers-Briggs personality test, it showed that it didn't have test-retest validity. So what does this mean? It means that not only is personality changing, but realistically, everyone is an ambivert. You now can be miles different from you 10 years from now. And I think that's really cool. Now, what have we talked about today? Well, we've talked about a lot of things, but what we've established is more of the idea of what makes an introvert and what makes an extrovert. We've talked about how personality is always changing and it's everlasting, and you today can be miles different from you in the future. We learned about the 8 cognitive functions and how by understanding which functions apply to you, you can give yourself a leg up in life by picking situations that match your personality. Now, some of you have goals that fit with your personality. I want to go to university for probably STEM, and since I'm innately an introvert, it works out for my personality. But this works both ways. See, if I was an introvert trying to become an extrovert because I wanted to become an actor, it's important that with the knowledge you have from this talk today, that you can identify what of your characteristics don't support your goals and what characteristics you want. By understanding yourself is to understand the world around you, and it can help you understand your future and the path to take altogether to achieve it. Everyone is an ambivert. That's a fact. But whether or not what side of the spectrum you're on is completely determined to what actions you take and where you are in life. But to end off, in the famous words of one of the most influential figures I believe in modern society, not that guy, this guy, Shrek, onions have layers. Ogres have layers. And we humans, we're ogres. Because we got layers. Thank you.